able to hear me? Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, fine, okay. Uh, okay, so Madhi, could you please go to the next slide? Okay. So here is a question for you folks. So there are two teams. Team A creates documents before developing any feature, and it makes a year-long plan with milestones. Then there's team B that barely creates any documents, and it makes short milestones, and they keep working. Now the question for you is, which team is being agile? So Madhi, what is your answer? What do you feel?
I think team A.
Team
Okay,
B.
okay. Richa,
Team B.
okay. And Deepak,
I go with team B. Team B.
team B, okay. And Vijay,
Uh, I should think it's team B.
team B, okay, fine. So I'll not get to the answer as such right away. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, thanks, Madhi. So let's think about the traditional way of buying and selling stuff, right? Where you probably go to a shop and you try to buy something. So what actually happens is the expectation is already set. The seller shows the item to the buyer. So, for example, if you're going to buy, say, a pen or a pencil, you see the item and then you decide to buy. Or even if it is going to be a, say, you're planning to buy a house or something, or the builder or whoever is going to sell you, right, will show you a small plan of the house, maybe a small model of the house. If they have already built the house, they will also take you to the house and show you how it is built. And then the buyer, the price is also decided. The seller, right, he says what is the price, and the buyer knows the price, he knows what is going to get, and if there is any negotiations to be done, they negotiate it there, and then buyer pays for the item. So either it is you pay it in the beginning, or you pay it in installments, right? So if you are going for a constructing house or something, you will not be able to have pay the lump sum initially. So you'll again have an agreement like 50% now, 25% later, 25% later, something like that. So milestone, based on milestone payment. So you decide for something, and then the seller sells you the item. So again, when the seller sells you the item, right, it may again be the completely fulfilled item, which, for example, say if it's a small item like a cycle or a bike, right, it is a full item, you get it in a single shot. But if it is a longer project like say constructing a house, or building an airport, or a big aircraft, again it will be on stages based on the completion. He will tell you at different stages, this is completed here, this is completed there, and that's how the selling happens. So this is common to everything, right? So in any small item, any vegetables you buy, to bigger defense dealings, right? Usually the defense dealings are expensive products. So even up to there, it almost follows the same trend. So the seller knows what he is selling, the buyer knows what he is buying, they have negotiations, and they buy. And now comes a catch in this one. Say, for example, you have ordered for a fighter aircraft. Okay, it's an aircraft which is going to be expensive, and it takes some time to build. And after some time, before the order is delivered, you cannot go and ask for changes in that. You cannot tell that, okay, I want, say, additional cargo space in the aircraft. Now, from the buyer's perspective, it may make sense, because he needs this is his requirement now. When he gave the order, he had a different requirement, and now he feels that having this extra cargo space, right, will help him in using his aircraft. But the seller is in trouble, because for him to make this small change takes effort for him. So he will not be able to deliver. So this kind of things normally do not happen, right? So once say our country orders for some aircraft to our aircraft manufacturer, they don't change the requirement or they cannot have any additional stuff added in between. So once ordered is ordered. So that is how is the what I say the traditional way of buying and selling. Madhi, could you go to the next slide, please? Uh, Madhi, could you go to the next slide, please? Folks, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, yes, Arun.
Okay. Madhi, are you able to hear me?
I think Madhi is on mute.
Okay. But he is not able to go to the next slide. Madhi, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, got it, got it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Madhi.
Okay.
Got it, yeah. So this is where we have something called agile in software development, right? It is equivalent to what happens in this slide. So somebody orders for a fighter aircraft, and then they request to have an additional cargo space. Now, like I discussed earlier, right? This is going to take some extra effort from the seller side. So it means the extra cost or the price on the item. So the seller explains explains the increase in the cost to the buyer, and the buyer in turn explains that without the cargo space, the aircraft as originally planned envisioned is not of much value, right? So because he has found out something and he has this requirement. Now there is more discussions. So buyer will revise the requirement, the seller will revise the price, and also the duration, right? So the schedule changes and the cost also changes, but they come to some agreement. So somewhere whichever helps the buyer and the seller, right? So we don't want it to be a win-lose scenario or the lose-lose scenario. We want it to be a win-win scenario. So the buyer and the seller should do the fair stuff, and they should be getting the fair benefit from the transaction. So here, like I told, the buyer revises the requirement, the seller revises the price, and there's a new schedule, and the work continues taking the new requirements into consideration. Now, this schedule change and the cost, we don't know how much it may be. It may increase the budget to twice the initial amount. Even the schedule could be increased to twice. And if that is not comfortable for the buyer, right, the buyer can again negotiate. The buyer can again say that, okay, this is not possible. What can be done in a shorter duration? The seller again can give him more options. Say, okay, if you want to do it in a shorter duration, then probably we can get these items. Instead of we making it, we can outsource it from outside, but that will again increase the price, or that will affect your quality in such a way, or whatever, right? The discussion again proceeds, so that again there is a collaboration. The buyer and seller work together, and they come to some conclusion that, okay, this is how we will proceed further. And this is basically what we think of when we think as following an agile way of working, right? Which is where you don't you understand that we cannot predict the future, and whatever requirements we give are based on the current scenarios. So in future, when things change, we again start the discussion. We again see how things can be what do you say better pursued, so that everybody reaches a win-win scenario. Madhi, could you please go to the next slide? Thanks, Madhi. So now let's see the difficulty in Agile. Okay, so there are a lot of terms floating around. You would have heard something called being Agile and doing Agile. And then there is again this stuff, agile with a capital A and agile with a small a. And then comes one of the biggest issues with while what you say moving to agile, which is the trust factor. It's difficult to trust people, at least in the what do you say in office space kind of thing. So trust is one serious issue people face when moving to agile. Then comes a change in perspective, right? So um, instead of the traditional way of having a fixed plan and moving towards a fixed path, in agile you are okay with changing requirements, you're okay to welcome changes. So all these require a change in perspective. You need to we need to understand both as a service provider and what do you say service consumer, that in agile nothing is fixed. So you need to be open to changes, and you need to be open to what you say adapt to new stuff. And then comes the problem for about assessing stuff. So for example, it's easy to assess the output. So what it means is, if somebody gives you a work, right? Say you have to write 10 pages of an essay. Now writing 10 pages is easy, which is the output, right? You write 10 pages, which is the output. But what content you put there, right? Which is the outcome of your writing. So maybe the reason you are made to write is to increase your writing speed, or maybe it is to make you write in a clear or what do you say beautiful handwriting. So there could be multiple reasons why somebody is asking anyone to write 10 pages. So measuring that, whether that writing 10 pages is able to satisfy that initial what do you say um, uh, reason behind the work, right? That is the outcome. That is difficult to measure, difficult to assess. So which is the same that happens with the as a difference between traditional and agile way of working, right? In traditional methods, you know for sure you have ordered something, and if that is delivered, you know that what is being delivered. And also you can measure the amount of work that is being done for doing that delivery, right? So if say for example you are writing a software to build a e-com site, you can probably say that okay, we have developed 10 screens or 10 web pages which are going to be part of your screen. Now to find out and to assess what advantage or what is the what use people get out of those 10 pages is the outcome, right? In that we cannot put a number to that. We cannot say that say at a scale of 1 to 10, somebody who uses this 10 pages will feel that the 10 pages are at a scale of 8 or a scale of 1. So if things are completely broken, if things are not working, it's easy to tell. If things are working and they are good, it is very difficult to assess that outcome, whether how good it is, or how to ratify it and quantify it, right? That is difficult when you talk about outcomes, which is one problem in using agile, which is the assessment of the outcomes. And then comes agile assessment. Now, when I say agile assessment, this is similar to what we talked about previously, right? The assessing the outcomes. Here, what we actually mean is uh, to to uh, to measure whether the team or the individual or the organization um, or anybody, right? The consumer or the service provider, anybody, how agile they are. So this assessment uh, is very difficult, because again this is about measuring the outcomes and how people mindset and how people approach stuff. So this is another difficult thing to do. And then comes the roles and responsibilities. In a traditional hierarchy, the roles are fixed. You have any say in a software organization, right? So anybody who joins fresh could be a trainer or a mm, um, um, software engineer, and then probably on the next state he will become, after some years of experience or something, right? He may become a senior software engineer, and then after some time a tech lead, and probably a senior tech lead. Now these designations may differ from organization to organization, but each organization will have a rough idea of what a senior software engineer does and what a tech lead does. So it may be something like a senior software engineer will have more responsibilities. He need not have somebody to dictate to him, but he will not have anybody reporting to him. And then probably a tech lead would be somebody who takes more decisions. He also have some people reporting to him. He guides them. So if he does all these things, then he can be called as a tech lead. Now there is a clear clear roles and responsibilities, and there is a clear career path for these individuals in traditional what do you say software organizations, right? When you come to agile based organization, agile and scrum in particular, right, they don't recommend what to say multiple hierarchies. So agile and scrum, they try to keep the hierarchy to the minimum, so it is all the horizontally scaled, so you have almost everybody at the same level. The salary part is different, okay, they may be paid different, so that we are not coming into that. But as far as the roles and responsibility is concerned, there are no clear what is a distinction between the roles, and other than your scrum master, product owner, or the developers, right? If you take any other agile methodology also, you don't have many of these traditional roles involved to that. So unlike your program manager, project manager, senior program manager, all those DGMs, AGMs, GMs. So all these things, we don't have this here. And that is another problem that is being faced. So people are worried what to do with the designation. So that again comes back to the change in perspective and change in the mindset to actually understand the new way of working. And then comes the theory versus practice. So if you see theoretically, there are two okay, one main document for the for agile software methodology, which is the Agile Manifesto. And then if you're following Scrum, you also have the Scrum guide. Now these two documents, right, are pretty simple, and they are very small documents. So the Agile Manifesto has say 4 values and I think 12 or 13 principles, which we can write them in a single sheet of paper. And similarly, coming back to the Scrum guide, about 13-14 pages, they don't have much information, or what to say much perspective information on them. So they suggest the ways. If you take the Scrum guide, right, they clearly define the 3 roles. But other than that, how to go further, they don't prescribe anything. Now, what happens in this case is people feel that there is not much information in the guide and the manifesto to which using which we can work practically. So practically, what people say is, even though the organization calls us agile methodology and they say they follow Scrum, they follow it not completely. And people start actually believing that whatever is in paper, whatever is in the manifesto, and whatever is in the Scrum guide cannot be completely implemented, and they need to be tweaked. So tweaking is fine, but the problem with this tweaking is it is kind of going against what is given in the guide and the manifesto. So that is another problem. So even though people or we all feel that we are following the agile methodology or Scrum, um, we are doing that with some caveats which we call as these are not practical. In practice we cannot do this, so doing this is bookish. So all those things are again stopping us to reach the full potential of agile and the Scrum methodology. And then comes scaling. So scaling is where you have bigger teams, right? Again, agile does not the manifesto does not tell anything about all this scaling, all these things. So the agile manifesto is pretty simple, it's straightforward. and it says gives guidelines like try to work face to face and let them all be together and don't put heavy work on anybody. Try to work with what you say a sustainable pace. All those things fine, but nothing more than that. It does not tell you that if you have a product involving say 150 people, how to go ahead. So you cannot put all 150 people together in one big hall, in which case again they all tend to become small groups, and it does not fulfill the whole purpose of face to face communication, right? And when you have customers staying far across the world and you have a development center somewhere, it's pretty difficult to actually have a face to face communication for all the team members to their customers. So for all these things, we need to look at how to scale things, and there are some scaling frameworks also for that, but scaling is another difficulty in agile. Now coming back to the first point, right, being agile and doing agile. So this again, there are a lot of what is say discussions around these points. What is being agile, what is doing agile? So doing agile, what people say is, again, I can talk only from the Scrum perspective. So if you're following Scrum and you have all the 4 events and you have fixed roles, right? You have people designated as a Scrum Master and Product Owner and say development team. Now this people consider as doing agile, meaning you have the team, you have the events, but you don't understand why you are doing the events and why you are having these roles, all those things, right? And then being agile is considered where you know what is to be done, why and why you are doing that. So the rationale behind having the Scrum Masters and the product owner and the developers and also say why you have all these events, why they are time bugs, and all those things. So if you understand the rationale, people believe that that is being, and if you don't understand the rationale, they believe it is not being, it is just doing. And then coming to which is again debatable, right? This point is again debatable. So next comes the agile with capital A, agile with small a. Not sure if you folks have heard this, but I've seen it even in some job description where they wanted people to know what is a capital A agile, what is a small a agile. So again, so uh, people are still not very clear and confused, and yeah, that's how things are. So these are all the difficulties. I mean, in a smaller level, these are all the difficulties that we are facing, right? When we try to move to agile. And Madhi, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay. And coming back to the assessment, right? I was talking about the assessment of the outcomes and the outputs. So outputs, like I told, are pretty clear to measure. So you can say that, okay, I spent this many hours working on this, or like I designed this many pages, or I wrote this many lines of code or whatever, right? So, but how do you measure the outcomes? So to measuring outcomes, there are different organizations have come up with the different methods, and this evidence-based management, right? This I saw it in Scrum.org. I'm not sure who actually initially proposed this one, and so they have 4 factors which they call as measuring those factors. They and taking action based on that, right? Is called evidence-based management. And the first one is the ability to innovate. So what they suggest is it is the what to say you should be able to measure how many new stuff your team or your organization is creating, okay, and how fast you're able to do that. And this they term it as the ability to innovate. And then comes the time to market. So you have innovated something, or you have you have newly what you say invented or found out new way of doing something. Now how much time you take to market this item, how much time it takes from what to say initial pilot or something, right, to the final giving to the end customer, right, where you complete the complete what you say value stream, and you are able to get money from the customer. So that how much time it takes, that's the time to market. Then you have something called the unrealized value, which is what the market is having, or the outside other would say, um, customers or clients are available for this product with money to give you the money, but you have not yet received from them, or you are not yet marketed to them, right? So those people are called the uh, that amount or that value is called the unrealized value. And then comes the CV, which is a current value, which is again how much currently, how much it can be anything. It can be the number of what you say people who come to your website, right? Your daily visits to your website, or it could be also how many people have registered to your website, or it could be again how many people watch your program, right? The TRP ratings, if you're watching, if you're creating any media content on video content. So all these things, whatever you're currently getting, is comes on current value. And so the unrealized value are who are the other customers or somebody whom you can get, or what is the other extra amount you can get. So that's the unrealized value. So this is a evidence based management, where if you see, we are trying to measure the outcome, or what happens because of our actions. So because of our ability to innovate, we may be getting more current value, right? If you take uh, companies that create new stuff, right? People are actually willing to spend more money to get those product, just for the novelty, and just because they are different, and just because they are better. So all these things are measured, and they come under evidence based management. And then scaled agile, right? They have some more measurements for them. So what they suggest is, they say we can measure the outcomes also, in addition to the flow and competency, to get the full measure of what the work is benefiting to the organization. And in your legacy project management, right, you also have the cost variance, schedule variance, where you measure how much you are deviating from the planned cost, and how much you are deviating from the planned schedule. So based on that, you may be taking some actions. So could you go to the next slide, Madi? So next we look at agile transformation and change agents. So this is what we look at when we want to change the complete organization, right? To move from a non-agile traditional way of working to a agile way of working. So here you need an organization-wide understanding of agile, and a complete change in perspective. So if say somebody at the CEO level thinks differently than somebody who actually sits and develops a product, right? Maybe he may be a software engineer, or he may be an automotive engineer, whoever finally is going to do the work. All of them should be in sync, and all of them should be in the same idea of what is agile and how they want to approach agile. So otherwise what happens is, right, they start expecting outputs instead of outcomes. So the CEO may start looking at the wrong numbers, like how many hours people are working, instead of what they actually deliver, right? How much work is given to the customer, and how the customer feels. Instead of looking at that, they may just start looking at the number of hours spent by each employee in the organization. And similarly, if the CEO is having the mindset, right mindset, and he does not care about the number of hours spent, he is worried more about the number of or the value delivered to the customer. If that point is not I would say shared across to the to everybody in the organization, right? So even though the CEO has a mindset, yeah, there may be a team manager or a program manager who has a different mindset, who, if he starts measuring time, or even if he does not want to do that, and he's having a different thought, if the developer starts worrying, okay, maybe if I finish the work fast and don't do this, maybe that will be a bad impression for me, so let me take more time to do something. So uh, all this, right, will in the end may not help the customer to move forward, which is what we are looking for, right? To make the customer win as well as our organization to win along with the customer. So a complete change in perspective and a sync should be present throughout the organization. And another thing is a win mindset. So uh, in in older times, right? The older methodology was people were always having a win-lose mindset. So what that means is if I want to win, the other person has to lose. So that is one way of working. And another thing is a lose-lose mindset, right? Where both parties don't want to what say break apart, and both parties are okay to what say settle for less, and which is a lose-lose situation. And a win-win mindset is where which is what Agile suggests, right? Where uh, the Agile manifesto suggests, where the team or the product team, the developer team work work whatever they could do to make the customer happy, and to give him the advantage in the market. And similarly, the customer also understands and work with the team so that they all also can follow the sustained pace and make sure that they don't do unnecessary work and all, right? Don't ask for too much. So all these are win-win mindsets where uh, we want to give something to the other person. The other person is also willing to give us something. And then comes the transparency. So like these are all things that may seem like small words, but these are actually the blocking points to become truly agile. So in transparency, that the important thing is nobody hides anything, even if that might be give a negative impact in the short term, right? So for example, if the developing organization or the service provider finds out that they have made some mistake, they be open about that. They tell the client or the consumer that this is a problem happened, and they also give some kind of a date or some time or some time period where they will be able to fix that particular issues, right? And similarly from the would say consumer side also, if they suddenly feel that whatever work they have already given, they may not be required, and they should not be afraid to come forward and tell that, okay, whatever we told you to do last month, we don't need it now. So all these things, right? Even though they may look like negative stuff, where the understanding is clear between both parties, all these things can be taken in the right spirit, and could be moved forward in the work. And then comes collaboration. So like we saw in our earlier slide, right? Whenever there is a change, we collaborate, we come together, we talk together, and we find out a win-win situation, how we can move forward so that nobody has to lose at the expense of the other, right? Or nobody has to win at the expense of the other. So it's all about collaboration. Small teams, small work, big work, whatever it is, collaborate. Whenever in doubt, talk to people. Whenever anything has to be informed, talk to people. And that is what collaboration is about. And these are the things that we need to do when we move forward in agile transformations. And then comes the responsibility and accountability. So that again, mm, we need to come out. So there's no I would say a clear cut way how to handle the responsibility and accountability, depending on the organization and depending on the work that is being done, right? So this can take different flavors. So yeah, Madhi, could you go to the next slide, please? So when we talked about scaled frameworks, so these are a couple of scale frameworks. So SAFe is you must be knowing SAFe, and DA is discipline agile. So that discipline agile is not a scaling framework; it's more like a agile toolkit. So they have a set of rules that can be followed for a small team, for a large team, for any kind of what do you say um, um, blockers in Agile, right? We could refer the DA toolkit to move ahead with that. So other than SAFe, you have other scaled frameworks like Nexus from Scrum.org, and you have, I would say, less from I don't know the organization. Then you have Scrum at scale. So there are other different ways of scaling, and it's better to learn about them. So I would suggest you try to study about these scaled frameworks, and whichever works for your organization, right? You can take that up and you can work with that. So I believe that is it. So Madhi, could you go to the next slide, Madhi? Okay. And this quote is about collaborative discussion, right? So this is by Eisenhower. He was I think a president of United States, and this quote is a nice quote. So what it means is, right, plans are nothing, planning is everything. So what he means by that is, when you do planning, right, what happens is you look at a lot of stuff, you talk to a lot of people, you get more information about a lot of things, and then you form a plan. Now this plan may or may not work, right? So the plan is not of much importance, but the process of planning, right, the process of um, uh, uh, studying stuff, getting more information, talking to people, that actually helps in the long run. So I would like to end this discussion with this point, and yeah, that's it from me, Madhi.
Thank you, Arun. If anybody have any questions, maybe.
So Arun, what was the answer